This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 17th of December 2020 and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am Miss K. In case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, why RUTO beat Raila in key poll. The Standard, Raila, our man won in Msambweni, and the Star, Person of the Year 2020. Let's start with the Daily Nation and the Standard. They both speak to the same issue. I think we should discuss them together.
Yes. The Daily Nation, why RUTO beat Raila in key poll. And some excuses here from ODM. Poor choice of candidate, factionalism, infighting and imposition of a national referendum on Kwale residents. So Raila's party ODM lose Msambweni. But these are just excuses. The long and short of it is, let's be honest, and I'll say this, William Ruto was just a little bit better organized.
Better organized?
Yes.
Okay.
Than Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
That's it.
Are you eating humble pie, seeing as you called it?
No, I have something else to say later. That's not humble
Well,
pie.
before you go there, the Standard, Raila, our man won in Msambweni. So here they say that outfoxed in Msambweni, ODM leader Raila Odinga consoled himself that the winning candidate, Faisal Bada, is a former member of the Orange Party.
Yes.
In a candid interview that he gave, he described his loss as the nature of elections, where you win some and you lose some.
Yeah.
He nevertheless complained of blatant voter bribery by some MPs and described it as unethical.
Yeah, there were some people arrested, right?
Yes, that is true. Then he also went on to say that there are a number of people who voted for him who are ODM members because of the work he did when he was the assistant of the late Dory.
Yes.
And he said that, and this is now in reference to the relationship between the vote and the general population's thinking of BBI. He said that his previous statement on the importance of Msambweni to BBI was misunderstood. He said what he meant to say was BBI may have an uphill task in Msambweni if the handshake candidate failed. And so all in all, Raila said that he had come to terms with the events in Msambweni.
Yeah.
You know what, my people, I will say two things from this. First and foremost, I do not think Raila Odinga or the system expected to lose. This was a black swan moment. And let me define what black swan moments are. Black swan moments are unpredictable events that are beyond what is normally expected of a situation and have potentially severe consequences. Now, that leads to my second thing. Who says that this loss may not have been engineered by Uhuru and Raila? And let me explain why. Maybe Ruto may just have given Uhuru the impetus to effect BBI immediately, all right? And that's because you cannot, you don't have to go into a referendum, for example, to change the structure of cabinet. And let me quote the Constitution. Article 255 of the Constitution says, a proposed amendment of this Constitution shall be enacted in accordance with Article 256 or 257 and approved in accordance with Clause 2 by referendum if the amendment relates to any of the following matters. 1, the supremacy of the Constitution. 2, the territory of Kenya. 3, the sovereignty of the people. 4, the national values and principles of governance referred to in Article 10, subsection 2A and D. 5, the Bill of Rights. 6, the term of the president. 7, the independence of the judiciary and the commissions and independent offices to which Chapter 15 applies. 8.
Are you going to read the whole Constitution?
I'm almost done. The functions of Parliament. 9, the objects, principles and structure of devolved governments or the provisions of this chapter. That means that the structure of the executive is not mentioned in this, meaning an act of parliament, Ms. K, please correct me in this, an act of parliament can actually have a non-executive prime minister, 2 deputy prime ministers, and maybe an extra first vice president put in place. So maybe Raila can be a non-executive prime minister from January 2021. Is that true?
Well, not from January 2021. That would be rushing the timeline. But yes, there are some things that can be changed without a referendum. Yeah. I will say this. The test of a black swan is that it is rare, it has a severe impact, and it was obvious in hindsight.
Yes.
While this loss was obvious in hindsight, I don't know what severe impact it will have.
Yeah.
But we also have our own test that we use to judge these headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is the headline topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And finally, is it thought thoughtful or just plain lazy. What do we say about the Daily Nation?
I like both headlines, honestly.
I like the spin on the Standard. Yes.
That our man won.
Yeah, he didn't lose. Raila didn't lose.
Oh gosh.
It's his man that won.
He really won in the end.
Yeah.
So I think we tossed the Daily Nation and we put the Standard in the parking bay as we talk about the Star, Person of the Year.
The Star has crowned the Person of the Year. This is actually something I didn't know that they did. Maybe I'm not reading it enough. But they say that their Person of the Year are the COVID fighters who have been at the front lines of the pandemic in Kenya this past year. Yeah. And they start this article talking about Stephen Mugusu, who was the 28-year-old doctor, I believe, who died of COVID December 7th with almost 800,000 shillings debt of hospital bills. He left a widow and a young child. But they go on to speak about, it gets very negative very quickly, that as all of this was happening while doctors were requesting PPE and other equipment, President Uhuru Kenyatta was silent. His government was focused on BBI and not the lives of citizens. State House has announced Uhuru would be going on a month-long holiday. I mean, it's like they just decided to put non-relevant sentences together and string them along and then decide to call it an article. This is not an article. Yes, I agree that we should give praise and indeed Person of the Year to our frontline fighters, but to then turn this article that is meant to be praiseworthy into something that becomes rubbish, you know,
very negative
aggression. Yeah, I don't understand the point of it. And I think we need to put a lot of things into context. And I think what the Star is trying to get at is that BBI should not be happening now because those funds that IEBC would use should go to other medical uses. Yeah. However, 11 referendums were cancelled in 2020 due to the pandemic. Yeah. And some of those countries were Chile, Italy, Russia, Switzerland, New Zealand, Armenia, and so on. If we look at all of those countries, what one thing do they have in common? One, they got hit very hard at the middle of the year. Yeah. And two, their positivity rates were skyrocketing, right? There were so many countries that were refusing amazing or, leading European countries to come to them, right? We would not let Italians into Kenya. Yes. We normally would. Yes. We would not let Swiss people into Kenya. We normally would. Yeah. Why? Because they were plague-worthy, right? You do not want them in your country. So it does make sense that they would cancel a referendum during a pandemic. Yes. However, now we go and we look at Kenya. Yeah. Our positivity rate, Mutahi Kagwe told us, I think it was yesterday or today, has dropped back down to 5%. I think that's what the president told us was the bare minimum that we needed to achieve. Yes. Second of all, the country has just ordered 24 million doses of the vaccine that will arrive in the country to be issued by January at a cost of $3. Yes. That is what other global countries are selling it at as well. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. So I think we need to look, forward. Nation building and state building can happen at the exact same time. If by 2021, when the referendum is happening and we're all vaccinated up and COVID-free, the country must continue to run. Absolutely. So let's not use a 2020 lens to look at a 2021 situation.
Can we then toss the Star for passive aggressiveness and negativity?
We burn the articles, but we appreciate the headline.
Tujay, I agree with you. This article was written by a Standard 6 pupil, number one. Second, you would be a foolish man to not think about, if March 15th, when the president called for a national lockdown, he locked down the country, not because he wanted or he was doing it for fun, it's because he was protecting the country. Exactly. And show me which banana republic across this Africa of ours has been updating its citizens every single day about COVID numbers. Yeah. If Ministry of Health had not taken such precautions and done PPEs across the entire country with all these protocols and measures, then we would be finding bodies lying on the floor every now and then.
As they were in Italy.
We know who owns the Star, so it was bound to happen.
Absolutely.
We appreciate the headline though.
Yes.
That leaves us with the Standard as our winning headline. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, and just like the headlines, we have a three-part criteria that we use to judge the cartoons for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Are they humorous or dry? Are they satirical or pessimistic? And finally, are they effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
Ndula, oh goodness. I like this cartoon for some reason. It's a caricature of William Ruto, Oscar Sudi, Boni Kalole, Muhammad Ali, Johnston Muthama, and Aisha Juma. And Dr. William Ruto is pouring some acid into the BBI litmus test. And out there is, what's his name? Faisal Bada. And
shooting for the stars.
Shooting for the stars. It shows that it has worked, whatever he was trying to litmus test. But down there is a broken test tube of Kibra. Kibra went bad, but Msambweni went right.
Failed test.
This is such a good cartoon.
It's great.
I do love it.
It's very accurate. Yeah.
Okay, I think put in the parking bay.
Yes.
Standard.
Standard, you have, so what do you call that? Is it a chariot or what?
Yeah, a chariot cart of sorts.
Yeah, cart, ODM Sambweni cart. And that, I don't know, that's a horse or a donkey.
Donkey, we don't have horses in South Africa.
In Kwale, actually, in Msambweni. And it's died, it's probably exhausted, and it was heading towards 2022, and it's fallen on it. Did not make it. I think that's a lazy one from that.
It is a lazy one, but I would like to say that Aristotle once said that the people are very fickle. So this donkey, could revive.
Yeah.
Don't be so pessimistic.
As much as people keep saying this is a reflection on the state, that they were unable to secure this election, or maybe it's an indictment on BBI as a whole, I don't think that's true. I think the government, ODM, they took it in their stride. They said we lost and it's okay.
Yeah.
Unlike, President Trump, who's trying to convince the nation that he won an election that he clearly lost. I mean, at some point, you have to hold your hands up and say, yes, I lost. It's an adult thing to do. And that's what consensus building actually is, right?
That is true. I say we toss that one.
Yes. The Star, you have also caricature of a fallen, that's a boxing match, the fallen Boga ODM candidate from Sambweni, and out there is Faisal Bada. On one corner is William Ruto and Aisha Juma celebrating Faisal's win, and the other one is the corner of Raila Odinga, Hassan Joho. Does that look like Uhuru Kenyatta there?
I think so.
And the referee is counting 1, 2, 3.
You're out.
The trailer saying, "Stop the count.
You have trumped us."
What does Trump have to do with it?
That they want a recount. I think in reference to your previous comment.
Right.
I say we toss it as well.
I agree. I think of all the three cartoons, the Daily Nation.
I think that leaves us with the Daily Nation as our winning cartoon. And now on to our final thought. But before we get there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. What is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Invisible Women, Data Bias in the World Designed for Men by Criado Perez.
Caroline Criado Perez. It's a book about women. Get her name right.
You wait for my final thought.
So I think the idea behind this book was to just understand how women exist in our world today, especially in 2020, when we saw a lot of women stepping to the forefront and being leaders. You had Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, the lady from Germany, I forget her name, I'm just as bad as 2M. But anyway, this book looks at the data bias in a world that is designed for men. So imagine a world where your phone is too big for your hand, where your doctor prescribes a drug for you that is wrong for your body, where in a car accident, you are 47% more likely to be seriously injured, and where every week, the countless hours of work you do are not recognized or valued. If any of this sounds familiar, chances are that you are a woman. So Perez analyzes how gender politics are affected and enhanced by gaps in big data. And she argues that human history is comprised of a pervasive gender data gap that effectively silences and erases women's accomplishments, experiences, needs, and daily lives. So I think we all know that there are more than 7.7 billion people on Earth today, and more than half of those people are women. Yet when you look at the heads of state, at governments, corporations, and other global players, we almost see that we're looking at not only men, but white men. And why is the world and its resources still run by men? Why are meaningful jobs and careers still comprised mostly of men? This is a man's world, we learn, because those who built it didn't take gender differences into account. So Perez in the book says that she's not seeking to bash male-dominated society. She very openly admits that she can't actually prove why this gender gap exists. Instead, she says that she's documenting a long-standing and seemingly inescapable problem that effectively renders half of the world's population invisible. And she's hoping that the evidence that she has amassed in this book will convince the public that this data gap actually exists and that it's real and has effects on women's lives. So one very profound example that she gives in the book looks at the consequences of a lack of gender-focused data. So she describes the snow clearing schedule in this town called Karlsloka in Sweden, where the snow-filled roads are cleared first, and then the pedestrian walkways and bicycle paths are cleared last. And so a lot of people may ask, why is this sexist? But it actually came from a policy that was derived from data that prioritized commuters in cars over pedestrians who may be ferrying children or doing the shopping. And I think just as a blanket statement, we can say men tend to work outside their homes and tend to travel to work in cars or in buses, whereas women are more likely to be walking a child to school or wheeling children in other, in strollers and whatnot. So this very seemingly innocent snow clearing schedule, together with the disproportionate burden that women have, on caregiving, puts women in a double bind. So Perez's argument is that big data gaps support the perception of women as the other. And this book will likely, possibly affect the way that you think about the world and how women fit into it. But I think what I want to ask the audience and the panel as well is whether this applies in an African context. Do these things hold up? Are they accurate? Do you see them as being worthwhile in our context? But I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was very well written.
I do agree. It was really well written. It was a really interesting read. And as a woman, I did agree with the things that it said. I know that 2M is shaking his head, nodding, turning, I don't even know what. But I'll talk about chapter 4 on what they call the myth of meritocracy. And the chapter begins with a story, which I will retell. So for the most of the 20th century, there were no female musicians in the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. Just for context, the New York Philharmonic is one of the oldest musical institutions in the US, and it was founded in 1842. So she says that a woman or two was hired in the 1950s and the 1960s, but by and large, the proportion of women in the orchestra remained at 0. But then, all of a sudden, something changed. From the 1970s onwards, the number of female players started going up and up. And you have to know that turnover in orchestras is extremely low. The composition of an orchestra is fairly static at around 100 players. And when you're hired, it's often for life. It's very rare that a musician is fired. So there was something remarkable going on when the proportion of women in this really old orchestra grew from a statistical 0% to 10% in a decade. And that something was blind auditions. So these were instituted in the 1970s following a lawsuit. So blind auditions are what they sound like. The hiring committee can't see who is playing in the audition because there's a screen between them and the player. Yeah. So the screens had an immediate impact. By the early 1980s, women began to make up 50% of the share of new hires. And today, the proportion of female musicians in the New York Philharmonic stands at over 45%. I'll stop here for a moment and say something. It doesn't mean, and clearly it means, or actually it doesn't mean that the women were less qualified.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah.
It just means that the fact that the panel could see it was a woman playing made them judge her performance, which I think is really sad. So they say that the simple step of installing a screen turned the audition process for the New York Philharmonic into a meritocracy. But in this, it is an outlier. For the vast majority of hiring decisions around the world, meritocracy is an insidious myth. It is a myth that provides cover to institutional and white male bias. The fact that meritocracy is a myth is not a popular one. And around the industrialized world, people believe that not only is a meritocracy the way things should work, they think it's the way things do work. Present company included. I can see you there too. I'm just shaking your head and appearing to think that I'm lying.
Don't worry about me.
Despite evidence to the contrary. So they did an analysis of 248 performance reviews on a variety of US tech-based companies and found that women receive negative personality criticism that men simply don't. Women were told, and I have been told these things, to watch their tone, to step back. They were called bossy, abrasive, strident, aggressive, emotional, irrational. And out of all these words, only aggressive appeared in men's reviews at all. Yeah. And twice it was with an exhortation, like they were told, be more of that.
Yeah.
Actually, a belief that in meritocracy is all you need to introduce bias. That's the worst part. So studies show that if you believe that you are objective, you believe in your own personal objectivity, or you believe that you are not sexist, that makes you less objective and makes you more likely to behave in a sexist way. Yeah. So were not found, so women are not found to have this bias. Men who believed that they are objective, especially when making hiring decisions, are more likely to hire men. They were more likely over an identical female applicant.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say this as well as I go down. And let me, before we get to I'd just like to say this, that women were more undervalued and were given more administrative work than their male counterparts. And by administrative work, I will state what it is. Housekeeping tasks like taking notes, getting coffee, cleaning up after everyone in the office, as well as at home. And worse, for me, mothers are seen as less competent and are often less paid, and being a father gets you more favor. Unfortunately, the myth of meritocracy survives in the face of statistics, and it's a testament of the power of male default. And to prove the male default, let us engage in an exercise that the author does in the book. I want you guys to think, just for a moment, about a genius. Just think for a moment.
A genius.
A picture, yes. Create a picture in your mind.
Okay.
And I know who you pictured, Albert Einstein.
No.
He probably thought of himself.
It's because these biases are given to us as children. And to fix them, we need to fix the system and have the children have more representative pictures before them. I rest my case there.
Now, this book must be read alongside the Feminist Manifesto by Mina Loy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not against feminist, by the way. I mean, what's wrong with enjoying some form of utopia once in a while?
Okay.
Anyway, I found an interesting chapter on Plow Hypothesis. Now, it was actually a Danish economist, Esther Boserap, who first came up with this Plow Hypothesis. Now, the thesis behind it was that societies had historically used the plow let me repeat that again. The thesis behind it was that societies that had historically used the plow would be less gender equal than those who had not. Now, the theory is based on shifting modes of agriculture from handheld tools like hoes or digging sticks to plow agriculture, usually driven by a powerful animal like a horse or an ox. The idea being that the former is more accessible to women. And this is because of differences between the male bodies and the female bodies. All right. Now, plowing requires significant upper body strength, grip strength, and bursts of power.
Why do you have to say it like that?
Because that's what it says. Okay. I'm just describing it, right? and this burst of power are needed to either pull the plow or control the animal that pulls it. And this privileges male bodies. It benefits male bodies. And it's because the upper body mass is approximately 75% greater in men, because women's lean body mass tends to be less concentrated in the upper body. Not my words, that is how words, all right? As a result, argues Boserap, where the plow was used, men dominated agriculture, and this resulted in unequal societies in which men had the power and the privilege. In societies that practiced plow farming tended to be more sexist than those that used normal farming tools. Now, you can already tell where she's going with this. She's asking for more affirmative action in the farm.
Yeah.
Right? That if we stop using masculine methods on the farm, chances are that the farm will produce higher yields, right? And she uses FAO estimates that if women had the same access to productive resources as men, yields on the farm could increase by up to 30%, right? I don't know whether that can be proven. But here's the thing. This is subliminal messaging that leads to the phenomenon of kept men. Right? If something as flimsy as plow farming has been used for centuries in India, in Africa, in South America, and is being blamed for sexism, the next thing you'll hear is men being told to stay at home and look after the house and the children. Now, the truth of the matter is this: we are not equal. Don't get it twisted. Okay? God did not create us equal in everything. I think everyone should keep their role as is. Changing the gender division of labor is tantamount to altering the biological role of gender. It's as simple as that.
What?
Yeah.
I don't...
How we are constructed and what we do are not related.
So you read the book and that was your takeaway?
Yeah.
That's quite disappointing, especially when the point of the book was to look at what women have achieved in 2020, or to look at it through that lens.
It is so obvious where she was going with this, you know, and she was saying, and I hear her, that if you're going to be in societies in India and Africa where they use the oxen, what do they call it? The ox and the horse and the plow.
The plow.
definitely the men would end up being more sexy than the women, all right? Because you find more men using the plow, not it's rituals of bonding, all right? But then I ask myself, what is wrong with that? Since when did we have to all equate the modes and division of labor for everything that we did, saying and imagining that our strengths were equal? I think we should just leave things as they are.
I don't think it's about leaving things as they are. I think it's about saying that we have two genders. We have people on this planet who are able to contribute to society equally. But they should hold on. They should be given the opportunity to do so. And I think that the point of your story, maybe I think what you missed, is not that we should be changing the modes of production, but that we should be considering that if we want to be as productive as possible, that we have to ensure that everybody can contribute in a way that makes sense, as you said, for their physical biology, right?
Look, Tuje, you know what she says? That of whole agriculture in Africa, 60% of it is done by women. Say, what is wrong with that? That's okay. You know,
they use
should men come out and say, oh, because 60% of women in Africa contribute to our food production, then we also want affirmative action so that even men are on the farm.
Why not?
Well, let me tell you, what is actually...
I will stop this episode here.
No.
Reason,
what I'm saying is, I think she should have left things as they are. Because she says, and in this chapter, she says something nice. She says that in some societies, most developed agricultural societies, where men used to be so seen in farms, when they brought technology into the farms, men reduced and men went into other sectors and industry and left women in doing farm work. That is, it's how markets work. But by the time you try and alter...
the men move on and leave the women behind.
Yes, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, don't try and alter things because they might... I don't just finish the episode.
But 2M, if we just allowed things to remain the way they are, then we would have a constitution from the old ages in Kenya.
No.
We would have the 2010 constitution that we were not aiming to change right now. We would have governments that don't aim to provide for their people. If we just agreed to leave things the way that
we would have slavery, we would have slavery, we would have no civil rights, we would have no independence, we would have...
Don't twist it. Don't twist it. Don't twist it.
Inequality anywhere, injustices anywhere, to anyone.
Is sexism
it's not fair.
Is sexism an injustice?
Yes.
It's just a cultural practice.
It is just a cultural practice. I was not going to say this, but I do have to say it. You are the most patriarchal human being I know in my life. I will say this. I was ending the episode for the bare fact that we do not want to take one chapter and use it as a lens to define the gender and the gendered data gap that she was trying to show through the book. Yeah. That would be a misunderstanding. And I will end with a quote. First of all, let me remind everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens. We are on Pan Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. But I will end on this. We had a winning headline from The Standard, a winning cartoon from The Nation, and Simone de Beauvoir, in her book, The Second Sex, which I humbly suggest that you read, says representation of the world, like the world itself, is the work of men. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse with absolute truth. And until the status quo changes, let us be comforted and emboldened by the words of the late, great Maya Angelou, who says that we are phenomenal women. That's what we are.